So in terms of the TCG, we're going to go through some news and then we'll go over how do you find a deal? What's the best budget ways? Can you find any cards that are undervalued if you want to have them either in your collection or you are looking to make a little bit of profit on them? We'll kind of go over the ways that you search the market. But first, as always on these daily markets, we have a look at some of the new news. We have got the new English set that has now been named Ascending Heroes. So this is basically going to be at least one half of the Mega Dream EX, which is coming out in 9 days, so pretty close to getting that. It's obviously going to feature the Mega Dragonite EX, which looks phenomenal, the first card that we've obviously seen, and we're also going to get some of these cards that potentially might even be a promo in this set. We are very much on the very early stages of this. We are looking to potentially get the 100 Battle Collection as well, which might feature some in there. This set, though, is going to be posted. It's going to be released on the 30th of January, so we have got a bit of a while to go with that. So Phantasmal Flames will have to do for the moment. We did get brand new. I've not even seen this other than this picture. We've got the brand new illustration that is coming out in, I believe, the Mega Dream set. That looks outstanding. I love some of these artworks that they're coming up with in this recent kind of batch. We do also have the English set. We have the Psyduck that's coming out in the Gym Japanese set. I believe it's like a 1 card per pack sort of thing, but naturally this is going to be coming out in the 28th of November in Mega Dream, and then we should see it in the Ascending Heroes, which I think it looks incredible. It's a great Psyduck card, especially if you're kind of familiar with the Misty's Lapras, and also was it Mr. Psyduck as well? That sort of kind of themed card of ocean built, that will fit beautifully with it as well. We also did get the pull rates for Phantasmal Flames by the looks of it, so that is going to be something you can obviously be found. We've got the Hyper Rare of the Mega Charizard 1 in 1,260 booster packs. We have the Illustration Rares in a 1 out of 9. We have 1 out of 12 for the Ultra Rares. The Double Rares are coming out of 1 in 5, and you'll be able to see some of the pull rate kind of extras here. We've got 1 in 80 for an SAR. Specific obviously goes up even more. So in general, I'd say that's pretty decent. It's not bad. I definitely think the double rares, it might have just been my personal luck, but I tended to get quite a considerable amount of them this time round. We've got obviously the Mega Evolutions there as well. 1 in 1,260, 1 in 101 for the SARs, 1 in 9 for the illustrations, 1 in 12, 1 in 5. So pretty standard stuff, and you'll be able to see all of these. If you go over to Pokebeach, you can obviously see a lot more illustrations there. A 1 in 6 for the black and white. Destined Rivals 1 in 5, 16, 12 for the illustration, and 94 for the special illustration. But they obviously didn't have the hyper rare of the gold Charizard as such. They had the specific golds that we've been so used to. So in general, that's kind of all the news we've got at the moment. The big question we're going to be having is, how do you find budget cards? How do people find these cards where they tend to either go up in value or you can start collecting? Now, there's a couple of ways that you can do this, especially if you look on multiple sites. There will more than likely be a site that kind of tells you this, or at least kind of goes for most of the price changes. So for instance, Collector do something like this, the app on your phone. If you go into Collector, you go into any set, they've now added a filter option that basically shows you the biggest and smallest price changes. So you can go into that and, for instance, go ahead and basically have a look through all the sets and see which cards have changed the most. So for instance, it could be 1%, 2%, and that could equate to a pound, £2, £3, all that jazz. So you can obviously go through there. Obviously, with Collector, you always have to take their prices with a pinch. The best way to do it is by either kind of confirming that with TCG or where you're actually going to buy it. So, for instance, if you do go into shops, if you're looking whilst in the shop, for instance, you can obviously do that. Or, obviously, you can go to eBay. So that's going to be another great way to be able to do it. You'll be able to find kind of lightly played stuff. That's the only thing with some of these cards is you don't know the full condition if you're not actually seeing it as such. Some people don't take necessarily the craziest photos for everything, especially if you are looking at a £1 to £10 card. They're considered the cheaper variations, whereas if you are looking at a price change, say for instance the Lucario from Mega Evolution has dropped down £50 for whatever reason, you really want to have a look at that card to make sure your £100 or whatever you're putting on it is actually getting a solid variation of it, because vintage is kind of okay for near mint's exceptional, but light play and then kind of your moderate is really where you're seeing a lot of the vintage come out, because realistically it is 20 to 30 years old now. We're talking very, very utilized cards, and in a different way of collecting compared to what we're doing now. Modern cards are being printed by the absolute bucket load, and the pristine value of them is absolutely incredible. The only way that you could kind of almost go past this is by quite clearly going for graded cards and kind of almost tailoring the market to what you want, and that is very difficult to do. I really mainly looking at kind of your budget stuff. So what I would already tell you to do when we're looking at a card like the Mega Charizard is to absolutely stay away, because naturally with this, you don't know where it's actually going to drop to. Like, yes, you've got a bit of a plateau here. We've been out just about a week tomorrow. So in England anyway. So really, we're at absolutely no point to say this card is either done rising or done dropping. So I personally, especially at a low budget, don't even look at the last few sets. The biggest thing you can do with Pokemon is definitely not look at these level of sets, because they're the new thing. They're the new shiny card. They're the new shiny pack that you can get in the shop. When you do look kind of further down, you very rarely ever see any Journey Together. Sometimes Scarlet and Violet base pops its head, but you very rarely ever see now a Surgeon Sparks, a Stellar Crown, without it being a random box somewhere, or it's come in a collection box. They're really the only times you see it. We look now at a Stellar Crown, for instance. It's a great one. A lot of the Scarlet and Violet earlier sets are at a perfect point right now. We kind of look at the top two cards. Squirtle and Bulbasaur have most definitely been on that value for a considerable amount of time. We've seen them now really rise up in comparison to the Terrapagos. Now, when we do look at the Terrapagos, if you've kind of seen it from the very start, it was a monster of a card. It was perceived as the big card, the big hitter, and unfortunately, the market has kind of gone sideways with it. Now you can kind of see over the kind of year, we're just dropping. We've not really plateaued anywhere. Even now, we still see it dropping even more. So the big question to be asking yourself, is it really worth it now? Is it continued? Is it finished dropping? And that's the big question when you're asking a 30, you're looking at the high tailored cards. You're kind of asking yourself that constantly. Is it finished? We look at the Bulbasaur and the Squirtle. We kind of see at the moment over the past year, like most cards it seems, we had that summer. So what I personally would be doing, and this is where trying to make profit on cards specifically isn't easy. You can just go ahead and buy, for instance, a lot of the new kind of phases is buying the new promos. We've seen it with a lot of the promo cards of Victini. Riolu will be the same. Charcadet more than likely will be following, because you look at the likes of the Shrouded Fable, the Greninja, the Kingdra. We then see multiple of the evolutions. They tend to go up in value, especially if they are an illustration rare. So they're going to be the cheap cards for right now. We then go back and look at like a Black Bolt, no, not a Black Bolt, a Black and White or an X and Y promo. They tend to be on pretty good value. So when we do go further back in the industry, and we're talking like a long hold for this, your short wins in terms of cards, very hard to come up against. But even if we go back to, say, Sun and Moon, we'll look at the Sun and Moon promos and kind of see where some of them have kind of exceeded their expectations, and more than likely, they're just the same as what we're finding now. They were in products that are available. Now, the one thing that we've got different compared to Sun and Moon and also X and Y is we have a lot more kind of SAR illustration theme ones. We obviously have like the Reds Pikachu Japanese exclusive, totally different. But you look at something like the Armored Mewtwo. Realistically, that card is going to be out of something that wasn't necessarily considered that being the prized pool. We look at the card in general now, like, yes, we're not going to have too many sales on it, but you can kind of see from a year ago, that is where people are pulling this data from. So the Armored Mewtwo, where did it come from? Promo card box. It came from a collection tin. So, I mean, in terms of a collection tin, when you kind of look at what you're getting it from, that realistically back then wouldn't have been £100. It probably wouldn't have even been 20 at that point. It might have potentially actually been slightly more. I've lost my mouse. It probably was a little bit more. So if you do look at, for instance, this is kind of what it did come from. So we got it obviously in here. You can see that we get some packs. So we're looking like Team Up. So that will obviously be a bit more expensive. And this tin now, 1,230. So there's obviously got to be more in this as such. That is what I'm believing it is actually in, because that's the first thing that obviously came up. But realistically, you'd have probably bought that for way under the price. Like, Pokemon don't bring out products that are crazy priced already. Like the biggest one we normally see is going to be something like an ultra premium collection box. That's retailing normally at like 120 to 150 as a really high. That is all you're going to get it from. So already, if I'm buying an ultra premium collection box, and this is already selling now, and this is moderately played, say we've got it straight out of the tin, we've obviously got it. We don't even have any that are actually near mint, but say for instance you've got the near mint, it's coming in at 229, you've bought the box fresh, you've not really opened it, this card is going to be exceeding that value already. So that is where people are now starting to see, okay, well I mean, if that promo is going to go up in price, why doesn't everything else? And even if you make the $5-10 on it, that is going to exceed a lot. Like you see a lot of these, all of these will have come from normal boxes, and now you can kind of see the prices. So that is where now you've got the influx of people just going out and buying every single promo card available. And normally, like you look at the Victini, that was, I think on the release day, even in this massive hype, that was still only like £5, give or take. You look at the Mega Evolutions, like we'll see a few of these. You look at the shop singles, obviously some of the staff promos will be much, but you guarantee that Mega Charizard X, it's priced up now because of what it is. But you look a little bit further down and you kind of look at your Meloetto, you look at now your Riolu, you consider that in another 2-3 years time, it will be $20, it'll be $30 if there's hype again, and you could just go ahead and buy them all right now for £5, give or take. That is where now that market is becoming very saturated, and it's harder to get. You're taking a little bit of a risk because the bubble, if you're holding on to 100 Riolus and the bubble snaps and it doesn't go back up, that's where you're playing the risk. It's what I personally like in terms of a value, like I'm trying to make money from it as such, is by just collecting the cards. I don't really buy multiple. The only way I would say multiple is I get 2 of them. And that's purely on the fact that say I buy an ETB and I buy a Riolu. I'm just purely keeping 1 for my collection and 1 to potentially sell, because I know I want to keep my sets. I like to have the complete set of everything if I can. Obviously it's becoming very difficult, but that's kind of how I like it. So if I'm looking to sell one potentially, I'll either buy collections and sell them off if I've not got some of the cards, and then I can kind of build my collection and worth that way, because they are going to hopefully be near mint if I'm buying the boxes, and the value is increasing or decreasing just purely on me slowly building my own collection. And that's just purely set by set. It's not like I'm buying 50 Mega Charizards in the hope it reaches over 100. It's definitely plausible, but that is kind of where you're kind of just jumping on that trend, and sometimes it will work. I think it's you look at the Kingdra and the Kingdra, the box was like 25, the card now is going for around about 40. So you have exceeded the box. If you bought 2 of the boxes, you could have opened every single pack and just sold 1 of the Kingdras, kept 1 of the Kingdras for yourself, and you're still up. Even then, taking out what you get from the packs, you are still up in terms of what you sold. So I kind of like using Pokemon as an example of making money to pay for the hobby itself as well. Because we know full well, Pokemon is not a cheap hobby to stay in, or even to try and get everything. So having 2 of a product is not a bad thing. It's why I try and keep away from sealed, because then it becomes a very messy kind of hobby to be able to deal with. But when I'm looking at cheap deals and looking at trying to kind of get a product where I'm like, okay, I could get on board with that, look 6 months before. Because what you kind of doing is everybody's looking at the new thing. Everybody's talking about Mega Charizard. Everybody was talking about Evolutions. Everybody was talking about the Pikachu. Then it was the Mewtwo. Then it was the Clefairy. And then it was the black and white variants. You now no longer hear anything about the Surgeon Sparks Pikachu. You don't hear about the lovely Greninja that's in this set, because it's old news. So use that to your advantage. Like the Greninja's not going down. Like realistically, all these cards are still at a pretty decent price across the board, but they're the outliers in the set. What you want to do is take yourselves a bit further down. You look at, for instance, a little Growlithe. This card in itself is dropping. Like, I mean, you can kind of see it here. It may not be loads, and this is where the difference is. It may not be a crazy amount. Like, we hit the absolute peak in March for most cards. During summer was a perfect buy time, but also Christmas time, people are trying to get the new thing. They're trying to get into that new hobby, their new Mega Evolution era, and everybody is offloading their old sets if they've got multiple of the Growlithe. This is the time now where they're thinking, okay, we've hit a peak in September, October. we might need to sell a little bit. This is where you pick up some of them deals. You look, for instance, at Team Up. They are massively in the price at the moment. Everybody loves a Team Up. Don't get me wrong. They are a phenomenal buy right now. A phenomenal card right now. But they are the hype at the moment. Same with the Mega Evolutions. We go back way further and we look at the X and Y. We look at all of them prices. And you should be able to see the absolute spike up that they had. And they will start to tail down. Because that's the whole point of them. They're not... At this point, they are new because of obviously the fact we are getting evolutions. Or we are getting Mega Evolutions. If we look... Where is Evolutions in itself? That was a pretty hype set in itself. But we look at like... What others had the Mega? So say we go Roaring Skies, because I know that was a pretty intense set. But you look at a lot of these, like you look at the Mega Ray, obviously that's the top of the top, the full art. But you go further down and you look at a few of these, like you look at the Mega Latias at the moment. That obviously has taken a massive spike because we are now entering the Mega Evolution space. Once we slowly tail her off, they're the cards that I want to be looking at because they're going to be dropping. And then eventually when we do go to another Mega Evolution, the fact that Garchomp's getting a second one, Lucario's getting a second one. We've not seen the Raichus as cards yet. They're going to be later on in the set. They're going to keep the hype absolutely buzzing. We obviously then have the 30th anniversary that's coming up in the next few months. So they're going to keep the hype really going. These are the cards, because of how they are so high, people will have invested in these. People will have been having a look at their Mega Evolutions and either potentially selling them off now or holding to try and find the hype. When it starts to dip, that's when you kind of just keep your eyes on them and have a look. And if you're not necessarily looking more vintage, I personally love vintage cards because obviously the pricing on them is already at its absolute peak. There's very little maneuver for what you could actually see. So for instance, if we look past like Jungle and stuff like that, but if we go down to like a Gym Heroes, for instance, you'll be looking at the top cards and seeing, okay, well, we look at something like an Electabuzz, for instance. The market side of it, I know they have a first edition, but say we go view more data, I'm hoping this has more. I did think they might have just damaged on some of them. But what you'll find a lot of the time with these vintages, they don't really move that much because naturally they're already at a certain level of a peak. Some of them might go up slightly. Like we can see here, it looks like a crazy thing, but realistically we're looking at like a dollar between the differences here. Even here we're looking at an extra 4. This is in a whole year in comparison to what we've seen. Obviously this is a moderately played. I don't know if we'll be able to find more. We'll go light. Oh, we've got Near Mint as well. So Near Mint's obviously going to be a bit more higher because the rarity of it is going to go up a little bit. Naturally, if you're looking at a light played, moderately played, there is a lot of collectors that are more than happy to have that. Personally, for me, as long as it's not completely destroyed, it's still worth something in a set, in a collection. Now, the only difference when you're looking at vintage, it's more for yourself more than selling on as such, because naturally, when it comes to vintage, you're going to have a certain pool of people that will be trying to get them. There might be people that are just getting into it, so they might not be buying a Scizor, for instance, for 81, but you could easily find a Scizor fan. You could find a Scizor, a Cypher fan, or Scizor, I mean, either work, but you could find a fan that's starting to then get their final cards in, and Rocket Cypher could be the last one. So vintage is always great for the moderate stable market. Vintage does have its ups and downs at times, but naturally it normally is a kind of stable set because it's nostalgic, so it keeps the value in it, and it's so old. But then also there's no reprints coming of that. Like there is most definitely no reprints of that one coming out. It's a whole different company as well. So the way I personally would look at a lot of these products and a lot of these cards in general is bypassing all of the new sets, because that's kind of your way of kind of going into a very volatile market, and you're trying to basically play the system with it in terms of either making money or trying to complete your sets. Like I say, with Stellar Crown, that Terrapagos was coming in at £100 for at least the first like month or two, or at least it was in and around that sort of level. Like it was 100 for it, and then it kind of dropped to like the 80. But it was nowhere near you ever thought it was going to drop down to the 30 and under. Now it looks like it could drop all the way down to the 20 because people are done with it. Same with Shrouded Fable. People laughed at that set. People did not like that set at all. You got deals on deals with it. And now you look at some of the cards. Like you just look at some of these, like even the Houndoom. That's a great card, and it's still holding its price very, very well. And if you look over the year, We may have hit a downwards point, but again, like others, we are coming back up. So unless you timed the market perfectly with Prismatic and sold out everything here, which in hindsight is brilliant, but realistically, no one really did. You might have sold a couple of cards high, but you might not have had the foresight to see summer is a big downwards period. Now, if you go further back and look back to last year, you'd be able to see, if you look at any of these cards, that summer normally is a downwards turn. It may not be as kind of big as a $15 to $20 loss on some cards, and then they come back up in September. But there is a general theme when it comes to Pokemon that everybody knows. In summer, people are normally offloading their spares, their duplicates, their extra kind of fodder, as such, if you call Houndoom a fodder, to purely just to do stuff. Like, genuinely, like, Pokemon cards are a way to potentially get a holiday. Like, you look at the Mega Charizards. The two of them combined is practically $1,000. That is, like, cheap in comparison to PSA, but you think of that in money terms, that's absolutely nuts. Like, you could quite literally get a little, well, I'd say a little, quite a nice little getaway for them two cards specifically. Cardboard that has come out of a pack. So that is where summer really does hit a little bit of a low, and kind of people need it. So what I would personally be doing is looking at like a Paradox Rift, even further going at the Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield. Now, they are obviously, again, coming round on a little bit of hype, but you look at some of these cards and go further down. Don't just look at the top 3 lines. Look a bit further and see what is dropping. What could be a nice card to add to your collection? Do we see the Joltik? I think this is a beautiful card, to say the least. Joltik on a Yamper. It's obviously got the design in the background. It's absolutely stunning. And then you check the market from it. Have a look where it's going, where it's heading. And you think, okay, well, it is kind of on that rise a little bit more. We might see where we're going. We've got the high sales of 30, lowest of 150. So have a look at them. What I personally would do as a very early on collector is just start collecting the really low cards. Build your collection up on that point. I'm not necessarily always here to say you want to go and buy 50 more Pekos and flip them for £1 each extra, because you probably could do that, but realistically it's very difficult to do that. Otherwise everybody would be doing it. But what I do in terms of how I make money from the hobby is, obviously, I sell cards in general. I like to buy and sell because I love to see different cards that enter, but then I can't afford to keep everything. If I get a Mega Charizard come through the door on a collection, I bought a big collection out, I would really have to sell that card if I've bought it out of a profit sort of scenario, unless I think it's going to go up as such. And that, again, I'm not necessarily all for trying to predict where the market would go next. But I'd be going 3 tiers down on this one, and just picking up some of these pound cards, £2. I'd start bringing the collection together just from these. Failing that, I'd look at some Japanese. Building your collection to a point where you can kind of see maybe a little bit of a growth in it. Because when we do look at kind of like your Roaring Moon, your Dottler, you look at the Gold Beach, we're looking at what, like maybe a £5 for all of them. Maybe you go 10 if you're getting them in shop, what have you. But then you go further back and you look at a set from Sword and Shield, and you kind of look at some of the cards there and you think, if you've ever collected during this time, so if we take one example of like a Rebel Clash, I know a Battle Styles is even more perfect. People hated this set, and you just look at some of them now and you think, well, okay, Tyranitar was obviously a big favourite. I personally don't think anybody laughed at that one, but you look at some of these golds now and you think these rainbows, they weren't this price before. The full arts of a Victini at $6. It most definitely wasn't here. This has got the lowest of $1.99. You could have, it's a high sale of $9 now, and we're already at this tip of the top. I'm not saying that it's going to happen every time, because this is a very interesting part of the market where we are at the absolute peak at this point, or at least the peak that we know. It could get worse. It could get, worse or better. It's either one. You could get worse or better, but you kind of see it now and you think, okay, well, if I bought that, if I had my collection, I could then consider it. Obviously, if you're a collector, you're probably not jumping at the chance to make $5 or $6, because that is your set. I've got my binders slowly setting up behind me. I need to find where I could put more, because I've got a stack behind me as well. But in general, like, that's just nice to see that the value is going up with it. And all I would take that as is, I've made money without making money. Like, I've still got the card, but it's worth more now in my collection. So if you do that 50 times over, if you buy, say if you spend £20 a month, £50 a month, whatever your budget is, what I would do, and it's how I always collect sets, is I will go for the uncommons and commons. If I can buy enough packs to get that, fantastic. I might have a chance at something big out of it. I managed to get the Surgeon Sparks Pikachu from it, but naturally that's like you're throwing a dice at that one. Then once I've opened the packs and I've got the commons and uncommons, hopefully I've got a lot of the EXs, I'll finish off the EXs. I want the base set fully finished. Then obviously I'll look at the cheap cards. I'll start to kind of go down. So for instance, if I was looking at, say I was looking at Mega Evolution, it's the start of an era. What I personally would be doing with this set is I would be doing all the base and commons naturally. So you go your low to high. I'd get all of these. If I want to try and master it as well, I'd get the reverse holos. I'm a hit and miss with that. Like, I don't mind that. What I normally do when it comes to reverse holos, when I buy collections and stuff like that, I will tend to just take the reverse holos out. They don't really sell for a crazy amount. I predominantly do them in bundles more than anything. But if I've got them, obviously they can sell. If I haven't got them, I'll put them into the set that way. I'll be able to kind of collect them as I go. And it just means that I don't have to either go and search for them, because they're sometimes not easy, or spend an absolute arm and a leg to try and get them. From there, obviously, then I'll bypass all of these. I will look then for your EXs, your Megas at this point for Mega Evolution. So I will go all the way down, and Mega Evolutions was a moderate set in general in terms of level. I will look at kind of your Manectric, I'll look at Abomasnow, because realistically at them points, they're £1, maybe £2 cards at most, or I'll wait for them to drop. For instance, the Gardevoir was a couple of pounds, as you see from the listing. I'll wait to be able to get that at £1. Then obviously from there, I'll look at potential illustrations. So I'll look at the Nangle stack, I don't even pronounce it, but the Shroodle, the Clawitzer, I'll look at obviously Wallace Compassion, and I'll be trying to pick them up for £1 or £2 here and there. Once then, and especially a new set, I will then kind of estimate where I think. So for instance, if I'm looking at like a Litleo, a £2-3 for that, not a bad purchase. I think that's pretty decent. Spearow would be not a bad one, because I know full well it's not going to necessarily drop below the £1 mark, but it's not going to go crazy above as well. If I get it and it goes above, fantastic. But once you get to that first page, and I'm kind of looking at your SARs, I'm looking at your trainers and all of that, this is where I'm like considering. So like with the Vulpix at the moment, I know full well that that's on the downturn at the moment. So for the past 3 months, we looked at it at a $30 card when it first came out. We're now seeing it at 13. Its lowest sold is £8.75 or $8.75. So I know that that's going to come down still. I'll wait on that one. I won't bother with that. I'll go to my next set. If I can't find anything that I want from the Mega Evolutions, or I've collected everything on the low market, I'll go back and go with whatever other set I can find. Because obviously people are always looking to try and get rid of kind of the new thing. You don't want to get caught up in the hype of buying a Mega Absol for 60 and then over the next 4 months it drops down to 20. That's the bit where I'm like, okay, I will wait and get it at a reasonable price. Same with the Mega Lucario. I know full well that will drop. The Ivysaur eventually will drop. And probably all of them at this point are still dropping. So you've got to wait. You only want to really look at them sort of level of cards, like I said, about 6 months in, give or take, because the hype's died down. We've more than likely got new sets out. And like I say, you look at like a Temporal Forces now. Granted, this came prior to the hype, but when we do look at these kind of lower prices now, you'll normally have 1 or 2 really high cards. Obviously, the Ghastly was one big one there. But when we do look a bit further down and you kind of go down to like an Arbok, I know that was a massive card at some point, or a Dramper at 13 now, more than likely we're kind of seeing them kind of go from that big peak. And to be honest, with this one, it's not really moved. So I know with this one specifically, I could probably go buy it and it'd be alright. It might drop down to, like I say, your $5 card, but realistically, if I'm only buying it for, say, around here at like £10, maybe a little bit under, I'm only ever going to potentially lose like 4 from it, but there is chance that it goes up. Dramper's maybe not the greatest because the card itself isn't crazy, I must admit, but you can kind of apply that to anything. If you look at a Swazbook over here, it's a stunning card. It's a great card. And you can kind of see, okay, well, at the minute, its lowest was 19. We could have bought it at 8 prior, so this is why I always have a look prior to the set really jumping up in value to see what's actually worth it, and if there is many outliers, because we saw the same with Prismatic. Every single SAR was way over the $100 mark. Now we look at this set specifically, and you kind of see your evolutions, they're out of budget. They're dropped, they're massively dropped, but they're way out of budget. But if we look down now and look at some of these, like the Ursaluna, this was massive price prior. Like, you look at this, it went all the way up to 100. Every single SAR was a minimum of 100. I don't think you could find one over it. But now we're starting to see the drop on them. These are the potential buy cards because they're still probably way overpriced. But when you do look at them now and you think, okay, well, they were over 100. I don't want to buy them at that. You look at all of these, like even this one. This one I got on day one out of a Demigod pack. And this was about 120 kind of at time of release. We are obviously a little bit over here, but this was coming in on collector at about 120. Realistically, looking at market value, it's why I say always make sure you go from collector to TCG. Then you look at obviously eBay as well. It had a massive price, and just look at it now. From 70, if we go on this one, from what, say 80 as a round up, all the way down to 33 in what, 5 months. That shows you just, in general, always wait out some cards. If they go up and they go up by 10, 20, whatever, at least you know that you could, like there's a chance that you could have lost. It's not always an easy one to know you either win or don't, because when you look at something like, if we go to, oh, what one was it in? What was the card that went crazy? Was it in Black Bolt? I want to say it was the Semi-Toad? I want to say it was this one. Yeah, so like this one. You would have never have guessed that this would have been, coming in at 206. Like, there's just no way. Maybe 30 because it's a final evolution, it's a stage 2, but purely on the fact that it's got this 666, and obviously then there was loads of rumors of it being pulled. It was almost then a banned card as such without actually being told. It's gone massive. Like, it's 172. You'd never have known. But it could have dropped. It could have gone the other way. If it didn't have this, if one of these was facing the other way, one of them was upside down, or they weren't even there, this card is nowhere near the 100. So it's why you've always got to double check. And granted, now if you want it, you got to pay the price for it. Naturally, it will come down at some point. They always do. But in general, that's something to always look for. So I know it is a bit of a long-winded one. So if you do have any questions down below, leave it there. 151, we've done a whole kind of video on that. It's a great time to look at that set specifically. Obsidian Flames, again, you always look at what's out now. Are the Charizards affected from it? We've got obviously the Phantasmal Flames. We'll obviously see maybe a little bit of a dip in some of them because they're not big thing. You can kind of see the big up here. I can kind of have two guesses why it kind of got up here. Maybe during a leak of a Mega Charizard, and then obviously the hype dies down. Always be very wary of that. Again, you could, in hindsight, buy over here at 50, see a massive upturn of double the value, and then sell off, and then you could buy it back. Hindsight, it's always beautiful to see, but there's probably people that kind of assumed that there'll be loads of people that have had the Charizard and sold it off at that 90, and now we're looking crashing down. The gold more than likely will be a bit more kind of subtle with it. We obviously see an increase still, but realistically it's not the same as the kind of the Mega Charizard, the Charizard in there going up an extra double the value. Like, we're going from 18 to 25, and that's if you can sell it at that. But naturally, they're kind of the things I would be looking at when it comes to trying to find that cheeky budget one, trying to find, and you can see even here, like, you can see a lot of Obsidian Flames just isn't that expensive. You obviously go to the top and you see a few that go up. Obviously the Cleffa was a nice one. That was upwards of 50 at some point, or 30, 40. Now it's dropped down to 19. Ninetales, that's another great one. It's the second in the set, and yet realistically we're looking at a card that's done the exact same. You can buy it at 16 at the moment. It's dropping. It's an interesting card to have a look at and potentially have a see when it does drop down, because it's a lovely card. But that's going to be everything for today. Like I say, leave any more comments down below. Anything you want checking, leave it in the comments as a suggestion, and I'll possibly make it into another market video. Peace.